Nyx arrived at High Rannoch just before sundown. The cart ride had been long and mostly silent, save for the occasional bump of a wheel against the protruding root or the thud of potion crates swaying behind her. A few chickens had clucked irritably at having to give way to the cart, and once a stag watched silently from the edge of the woods. The village itself had been quiet when she arrived. They hadn't sent a welcoming party. She hadn't really expected one. At first glance, the cottage looked as if it grew from the land itself, built into the slope of a mossy hill and half covered in ivy, patched in places with wood and clay. It stood a little apart from the village, with a path from the back porch into the woods beyond, while the front steps faced an old well and a forgotten herb garden overrun with weeds. A faded wooden plaque by the gate read, "No curses without consent." There had been a letter waiting inside. No signatures, just a few lines in looping script. If you're reading this, I'm probably missing. Or dead. Let's hope just missing. So first up, welcome to High Rannoch. It's a nice place, even if the people can be a little disaster prone. You'll be taking my place as village witch, and will be responsible for curing them of whatever injuries or diseases they've managed to pick up. Nyx read the note twice, and then tucked it into a drawer without comment. Part of her assignment from the coven had been to figure out what had happened to the previous witch assigned to this village. But she was in no hurry. All manner of things could go wrong in villages as small as High Rannoch appeared to be. She spent that night beneath the stars. The bed inside was neatly made, probably untouched for weeks, but she knew better than to risk it. Instead, she dragged the pile of quilts out back and settled beneath the moon's quiet gaze. The next morning, she found dark bundles of dried herbs in the rafters, scrolls of half-finished recipes between floorboards, and a series of tiny X's scratched into a map of the surrounding forest. None of them were labeled. The previous witch must have been the scattered, eccentric sort. Just her luck. At this rate, she might as well throw everything out and start from scratch. She washed teacups, relit the lanterns, and swept the floor until the stone tiles showed through the dust. She found a familiar sigil etched into the hearth, an old lunar warning circle marking the previous witch as part of their coven. Nyx carved her own into the wood above the door. The cottage wasn't hers, not yet, but she would make it so. Welcome, Wanderer, to Death, Dice and Diaries. Today we are diving into Apothecaria, a solo journaling RPG by Blackwell Games that leans towards the cozy end of the arcane spectrum. Herbal remedies, small-town mysteries, and a little dash of mischief if the wind is just right. For those unfamiliar with solo RPGs, they are tabletop games designed to be played alone. You use prompts, cards, dice, and your own imagination to build a story from the bones up. It's like collaborative role-playing, except your only collaborator is the haunted echo of your own brain. This is not my first playthrough of Apothecaria, so I won't be figuring out the rules as I go or doing a how-to-play style type game. I've also decided to do a more fictionalized type of narrative over the in-character journals that I normally write. I'll be playing with the core game and then adding in the Nightfall and Dance of Season expansions. There might be more expansions in the future, but we'll see as we get there. I will put up prompts on screen as I play so you know how the story was created. If you have any specific questions, feel free to comment and I'll try my best to assist. Otherwise, you should also check out the Blackwell Games Discord. It is super active and honestly just a lovely kind corner of the internet. The main gameplay loop for Apothecaria is diagnosing ailments in the locals, foraging for reagents and brewing potions to cure them. The game is played with a standard deck of cards. If the card matches or exceeds the difficulty rating of the reagent, you successfully find it. If it's below the requirement, you resolve the corresponding event instead, and then draw a new card. If your potion is successful, you cure the patient and earn some silver and reputation for your trouble. If your timer runs out before you get all the reagents, then you fail to cure the ailment and have to deal with the consequences. Bummer. As you progress, you can upgrade your tools, acquire familiars to aid your task, and unlock new abilities that just enhances your witch's capabilities. I'll be following the journey of Nyx of the Third Moon, a tiefling-esque witch cursed at birth to never sleep indoors. She's come to the village of High Rannoch to take over the role of village witch after the previous one vanished, mysteriously, as one does. Nyx is thoughtful, a little odd, kind of haunted, but she means well. Probably. I use Notion for all my digital note-taking, and I do have my structure available as bare bones template, not including the actual content from the game. And it is shared on both the Blackwell Games Discord and my own LichLight Patreon, if anybody's interested in checking it out. You are welcome to give it a spin. It is available for free, if you do like to over-engineer your notes. And that is quite enough waffling from me. Let's pull a card and get started. Spring, week 1. The knock startled her in its volume. It seemed to reverberate straight through the walls. She opened the door to a man who nearly filled its frame. Broad-shouldered, barrel-chested, a face like an old oak stump lined with many winters. His beard warred for territory with the thick dark fur that seemed to be growing up out of his collar. "Evening, Miss Witch," he rumbled. His eyes were sharp, a little weary, but not unkind. "The name's Rusk Tailbinder. I am the village woodcutter. Don't mean to barge in, but I've got a matter best seen to before it gets too comfortable." He ducked beneath the lintel, sweeping awkwardly as if half expecting the roof to cave in. There was a self-consciousness to his movement. It was not until he unfastened his coat, revealing a cascade of fur across his chest and shoulders, that Nix understood the shape of his unease. "I woke up like this during winter," he admitted, one hand smoothing the fur as if to tame it. "Didn't feel cursed at first. Warmest I've been in years, truth told. But when your voice drops low enough to calm goats and folks start asking if you're kin to bears. Well, it's the spreading I mind. If it reaches my face, I'm filing a complaint. With somebody. Maybe the mountain spirits. I'm not fussed about being a bit wild, you see, but I'd rather not wake up howling at the moon, if you catch my drift." Nix listened and watched the way his hands fidgeted. Strong hands, but careful, as though afraid of startling her. Beneath the bravado, she sensed an edge of worry. Not fear for his life, but for what might slip away if he changed too much. She poured him tea from a mismatched pot, the steam curling with the scent of chamomile and late winter apples. "Let's see what comfort we can find then," she said. Using the scattered and disjointed notes left behind by the previous witch, she determined that Rusk suffered from something called Yeti chest, and she would require ingredients that cured hair and lung afflictions to deal with it. The next morning arrived thin and hopeful, sunlight glimmering on frost-rimmed grass. Nix woke beneath her pile of quilts, listening to the lazy call of the lake birds that she'd not yet learned to name. Rusk's ailment weighed heavily on her mind, so after breakfast of cold oatcake and the last of her dried plums, she gathered her satchel and set out strange swaying weed. She paused on the sandbank, boots sinking into the sand as she surveyed her task. She needed gas weed for the lungs and mermaid's gift for the fur, both fussy in their own ways. But it was neither plant nor creature that first caught her attention. It was the impossible shadow drawn out across the shore. Where the beach curved into pebble and reed, something enormous loomed. A giant's sword, blade as tall as a tower and wide as a barn, half buried and barnacled from seasons spent in wind and rain. The hilt glittered with quartz, and moss and wildflowers had claimed the cross guard as their own. But it was the etching that set Nix to wondering. Some scenes told of battles, others of long, lonely wanderings. Someone had loved this weapon once. She trailed a hand along the blade's lower edge, feeling the language of old storms and quiet years. It had certainly been there for a long time, yet the sword seemed expectant, as though its owner might crest the next hill at any moment. As she circled the sword, something green and delicate clung in the shadows. Mermaid's gift, its bright threads swirling just above the tide line. Carefully, Nix harvested the clutch, mindful not to touch her lips or eyes, remembering stories of hair sprouting in unwelcome places. Not 10 paces further, a wavelet delivered the battered bottle to the shore, glass frosted and stopper sealed with wax. The message inside was written on crisp new scrap. "If you find this answer true, what are you searching for, and what have you lost? Reply, throw me back into the lock, but only after you've spoken your answer aloud." Nix paused, considering the questions before whispering. "I'm searching for belonging. I've lost the shape of home." She tucked the message back inside and flung the bottle gently into the cold, clear water, watching as the current pulled it out towards the islands. Some secrets she knew were meant to stay adrift. With the bottle gone, she waded into the shallows, careful not to slip on the slick stones. Below the surface, pockets of pale green gasweed undulated like slow-breathing animals. She used a hooked stick to ease several bulbs into her net, the gas hissing sweet and sharp as she trapped it. A heron stalked her progress with professional disinterest. As the sun crept higher, Nyx lingered for a while on the giant's sword, pressing her palm to the etchings and promising a quiet return. Then, with her harvest secured, she made her way back towards High Rannoch. The half was cold, but she set her finds on the table. With a kettle of spring water and the battled cauldron, she began her work. She brought the water to a soft simmer, then dropped in a careful measure of Mermaid's Gift. Pale green strands swirled in the steam, releasing vapor and a sharp briny scent that mellowed as she chanted. From root to crown, let hair be bound, not lost, not found where it should not be. She crushed the gasweed seeds and pulp in a stone mortar, their cool fizz escaping in tiny sighs. When she added this to the pot, the mixture burbled. She stirred it with a driftwood stick, clockwise and slow, counting her breaths as this potion thickened and brightened to a pearly sea glass green. It smelled of sea spray and distant rain. At last, she strained the liquid through muslin, bottled the potion in glass and sealed it with blue wax. Tonic of the Gentle Gale, she named it. A silver swirl glittered potion as the magic reacted. She gave Rusk the vial and instructions. Warm a few drops in his palm each night, work them gently into the areas he did not want to be furred. And wait 3 evenings. The wild urge should subside and excess hair would recede. Turning the bottle over in his thick hands. He sniffed it, let the drop glisten on his thumb and grinned. If it grows fur on my tongue, you'll hear my howling from the fire circle to the mountain peaks, he threatened with a laugh. Then you best not drink it, woodcutter. Topical application only. His gratitude was evident, if a touch awkward. He left 16 pieces of silver on the kitchen table. Worth every coin if it lets me keep my chin, he said, then ducked out of the door, whistling a tune. After Rusk's visit and the hush that followed, the cottage felt emptier. Nyx set aside her silver and set out for the edge of the forest. She chose a glade where the undergrowth parted for early wildflowers, crocus, snowdrop and the first shy of primroses. Here she laid her circle, stones gathered smooth from the riverbank and field, blooms tucked between, each chosen with the care of a wish. She pressed her palm to the earth and let the shimmer of her magic ripple outward, quiet and patient as roots growing towards water. She sat in the center of the circle, cross-legged, eyes half closed, letting the forest's pulse slow her own. She listened. Bird song, a squirrel squirrel, wind sighing through the leaves. Time softened around her. Somewhere a voice began to rise. Not a call in the woods, but a yip at the edge of thought, warm, curious, and sharp as a snap of dry pine. She answered by mimicking the sound as best she could, and felt something tug at the warm place in her chest where her magic resided. A flicker of smoke curled through the air, then resolved into a creature with a pelt of blazing orange and black-tipped paws. Its eyes were golden knowing, tail glowing like embers. The jackal trotted into the circle as if he'd been expected all along, leaving a trail of prints and the scent of burnt cinnamon. When he curled at Nyx's feet, the stone beside her grew warm, and her teacup set nearby began to steam gently. The jackal's ears twitched, and he grinned in a way that was almost smug. Nyx laughed, a sound brighter than she'd made in days. Sooty, she said, giving him a name for the residue he'd already left around the cottage. You've been waiting for me, haven't you? Sooty's tail flickered with pride. He eyed her back, then the sky, as if pondering which to devour first. She scratched behind his ears, and he leaned into her hand as if bestowing a blessing. In time they would learn to communicate properly, and he would add his magic to hers when they brewed cures for the village. Something in her already knew. With a swipe of his tail or a huff of smoky breath, he could sweeten a brew or drop poison from a finished tonic. It would have been useful to have him around earlier, as the mermaid's gift was known for its subtle poison, which is why she'd instructed Rusk not to drink it. When Nyx went to be under the darkened sky that night, it was with Sooty curled close, warming her feet. She let herself feel, just for a moment, entirely at home.